right, we're working on, we're just a reminder on how to graph from tables and from equations. This is a skill you guys will need to know, be able to use as we go through this. So we'll start with some really basic examples about how to graph from a table, and then we'll move to some equations and go that way. We are only dealing with linear equations, which means those are straight lines, and then we are dealing with quadratics as well, which a quadratic, again, that's something that has an x squared in it. So this is like y equals something x, and this is y equals like x squared. These form lines. These are like our u's and that kind of stuff. So if I look at this first one here, I've got this table of values, x, y values. Remember, these are just points, guys. So if I go and graph this, remember this is my x-axis, this is my y-axis here. This is just telling me to go 2 to the right and 3 up. So positives right and positives up for the y. So I would go over here to 2, and then I'm going to go to 3, and I'm going to put this point there. Then I go to 4, so that's 4 over here, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to go 6 up, which I'm going to have to make this a little bit bigger here. You guys will have, this is why you use graph paper, because you don't have to worry about any of the other stuff that's going on here. So we're going 4, and then we're going 6, which should be right about here. Then I'd have 6, 9, so I'd go over 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then up to 9, which would put me up right about here. And so you guys can see that this is going to form this nice straight line here. If we connect everything, we don't necessarily have to connect everything. Like it could just be a bunch of points. Just a reminder, this is the point 2, 3. Remember, it's always x, y. This is the point 4, 6. This is the point 6, 9, 8, 12, so on and so forth. So those are just all points that we have there. Okay. Again, tables are just points. Let's look at another one here. This one wants us to look at graphing from an equation. That's not too bad, guys. So for this one, all I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my XY table here, and what I'm going to do is just plug in x values. So like I could plug in, I like to put some negatives as well, so I'm going to go like -2, -1, 0, 1, and then 2. Let's just go with those 5 values. So I'm just deciding, like some people say, well, where did I get those values from? I just decided that was a good place to start. You can start just about anywhere that you want with these. So I usually try to start around 0 and go either way of those. So for this one, I'm just going to plug in -2, so that would be 2 times -2 minus 1, which when I simplify that, that's going to give me -4. -5 is what I get from that. Okay, so that's the y value that corresponds with -2. Then I'm going to plug in -1, so it's going to be 2 times -1 minus 1, so this will be -2 minus 1, which will give me -3. Then I'm going to plug in 0, so that'll be 0 minus 1, which will give me -1. Then I'm going to plug in 1, and that'll give me what, 2 minus 1, which will give me +1. And then I'm going to plug in finally 2. Again, these are just the values that I plugged in. It gives me a good idea of where this goes here. So that would be 4 minus 1 is 3. And then I can graph this just like what I did before. I can go to -2, which would give me left, and then down 5. And there'll be a point right there. Then I can go to -1, so that's left 1, down 3. Okay. Then I can go 0, -1, which is going to be right here. Then I can go 1, 1, that would be 1 to the right and 1 up. And then I can go 2, 3, which would be 2 to the right, and then up 3 here. And then you guys can see this line's just going to go straight on through here. So that's graphing with a table. I could have graphed this, just a quick reminder, you could have actually graphed this using your point slope form, which you guys remember, probably should have remembered. If you guys remember, y equals mx plus b, which the m is my slope, so that's my slope here, and then the b is my y-intercept, meaning that's where it crosses. That's where it crosses the y-axis. So I could have actually just started at -1 down here. I would have known there was a point there. And then my slope, it's rise over run. So this is 2 over 1. So I'd go up 2 over 1, and it'd put me a point right there. And I could keep doing that up 2 over 1. Again, up 2 over 1. So there I've got 3 points already. I could also go down 2 and then to the left 1. As you guys can see, this forms that line that I'm looking for here in this. So, and it gives me the exact same points. I have this point at 0, -1. I have this point at 1, 1. I have this point at 2, 3. You guys can see it generates every single point the exact same way. So that's another way to do it. You can do this nice little table, or you guys learned how to graph them like that as well. So, all right, let's look at something that's quadratic. So some things that are quadratic, guys, let me just show you here. If we do an XY table here, what happens here? Again, we'll go with -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. That's a good place to start. If I plug in -2, remember I have to go -2 squared. I can't, it's got to be in parentheses here, which that makes this 4. When I plug in -1, that makes that 1, because I'm going to square -1, which will give me +1. When I square 0, that still gives me 0. And when I plug in 1, that still gives me 1. And when I plug in 2, that still gives me 4. So if you notice, there's this pattern that it repeats here. And so when I go to graph this, guys, if I go to -2, and then it'll be up 4, that'll be right at that point. Then I go left 1 and up 1, which would be right there. 0, 0 is right here at the origin. 1, 1 would be right here, and then 2, 4 would go right here. This forms, these ones that are squared always form this like U pattern here is what we have for each of those every single time. So if you can see that it kind of repeats itself, like if you look at the Y's, if you notice it just kind of repeats itself, you know that it's going to be a quadratic type value. And this always follows this pattern, guys. I'm always going to go up 1 over 1. So that'd be 1 over 1 for the first one. Then if you notice, I go up 3 over 1. And then the next one to go over is going to be up 5 over 1. So this next one will be 5 over 1. It follows this pattern from once you find this bottom point. This bottom point is what we call the vertex. We'll talk more about that later. But this bottom point is the vertex. I go up 1 over 1, up 3 over 1. It's just 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. It just keeps repeating like that, 1, 3, 5, 7 over 1 every single time. So I bring that up because, guys, when I have a table of values and I've got to first recognize, if I go to start to graph this here, okay, let me just show you here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27 up, 1, 2, 6, over there. Okay, we'll go to that point right there. So if I go to start graphing this, this goes -3, -6. So I go -3 and then down 6, which puts me down here. Okay, and then I go -2, -3, so -2, -3, which puts me right here. And then I have -1, -1, -2, which puts me right here. And then I have 0, -3, which puts me here. And then I have 1, -6, which puts me right here. So if you guys notice, it's forming this, if I connect all these dots, it's forming the same pattern that I just had here. It's just upside down, and that's okay. So to find these other points, what I need to do is I need to fill in that spot, and that spot. So this would be -4, this would be 2, and this would be 3. I just need to know my Y values. And sometimes this is hard for students But if you understand the pattern, right, from this point it goes 1 over 1. And then from there, 3 over 1. 1 over 1, 3 over 1. So that means this one has to go 5 over 1. So this would be 5 over 1. So if I go down 5 from this point here, which is at -6, and I go down 5 more here, that would give me -11. So that would be for this one. It would be that -4, because that puts me at -4, -11. I'm just following this pattern. It's the same thing over here. It goes 1 over 1, 3 over 1, and then again 5 over 1. So that's going to put this point at 2 at -11, because that's what that repeats. And then if I had 5 over 1 here, that means this one's got to be 7 over 1. So 7 over 1 here for this one to get me to 3. So I need to go down 7 more from there, which would put me at -18 is where that would be. This pattern helps us with quadratics. Again, for linears, it's not a big issue, but for these it does. So that's the gist of this stuff. If you got to go back and look at this stuff that I just did, then please do that, okay? This has been your Math Moment with Mommy. Adios.